Oh, for God's sake, seriously. Hold on. We got to edit this. So you can't be on that Twitter. Remove, and I've got to add my Twitter because apparently we need premium to stream on Twitter.
I've had to upgrade my Twitter account so I can stream.
Might have to upgrade on the Fantasy Fanatics account. Well, it's been live for 20 minutes. Hello, everyone, and we'll get started in a sec for people listening on YouTube.
A brief peer behind the curtains to see the professionalism and organisation that is the AFL Fantasy Fanatics podcast.
This is how the magic happens, guys.
This is how the magic happens.
Wait for Bales to work out whatever he's doing over there, and then we start talking.
Yep. Alrighty, well, that's all set, so I'm ready to go on my end.
Let's do it.
Oh, you wait for me? Oh, I'm the host, right? Yeah. That's right. I didn't know if we were doing the same old Sunday stuff or whether Bales, you were just going to run this out.
Oh,
I guess I should have read the show notes. All right, I'll read the show notes for the first time ever as I'm reading it live. All right, cool. All right, hang on 1 second. Let me move this screen so it looks like I'm actually. All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. We are back and live, as you can hear, for the first time ahead of the 2025 AFL fantasy season with a massive pre-season ahead. Hope you've all enjoyed your off-season, but it's time to get back into fantasy and get your pre-season research started. I am your host, although I almost forgot, and AFL Fantasy Fanatic Tim Guest, and you can find me on socials at TimGuestAU. For those of you listening on the pod, it's Sunday the 22nd of December with Christmas only a couple of days away. Come and join us next time on YouTube or X. And a massive thanks to all of you who are joining us live. Smash that like button. And if you want a question answered, simply comment below and we'll get to as many as we can before we finish up. Now, joining me as always are my co-hosts, and we got a bit of a special surprise tonight as well. But first, I'm going to hand it over to the man, the man that pumps out fantasy content like nothing else. I think, you got about 4 weeks break this year, Bales. Tell us, mate, how was your break?
It was good. 4 weeks off, doing a bit of BBL fantasy, but as I've said to Jordox and on the phone, that's crap. So too many bullets and forced trades. So AFL fantasy can come hopefully quickly. But no, it's been good. Had a obviously break and obviously over in the US for 6 weeks. Obviously doing a bit of AFLW fantasy content while I was there. But back in Australia now, which is good. Went from -6 to 40 degrees in the space of about 4 or 5 days. That was a bit tougher on the body, that's for sure. But it's been good. And yeah, unfortunately, no hat in AFLW fantasy, falling just short. Should have captained Mim Strom on the final day, but didn't, and finished around that 110, 115 mark. I can't remember, and I don't want to know because I didn't finish top 100. But no, going good, and looking forward to chatting with you boys for some fantasy ahead of the new season.
Awesome, mate. Awesome. Well, good job with all the AFL fantasy content. You guys did a great job putting all that out. I know it helped a lot of the coaches get their team sorted out, and glad to hear you enjoyed your trip. Let's turn it over to he was the new dog last year, but now you're just part of the furniture, mate. It's Jordox, mate. How's your off season been, mate? Well, I haven't even seen you now for a couple of months.
Yeah, it's been a while. Going well, boys. In the festive spirit, as you can see, for those on YouTube. Just been flat out with work and family stuff, getting ready for the big day, which is not far away. But season greetings to all of you. And yeah, it's funny. It's so different to what it used to be. Back in the day, you'd finish the season in August, and you pretty much wouldn't think about fantasy too much until the new year. So things have definitely changed. I never thought I'd have my team already done before Christmas, but that's the climate we're in. And I'm just super pumped to see you boys and to get on and have a chat about fantasy and, at the start of summer. So let's get into it.
Awesome, mate. Awesome. Well, we've got a pretty special announcement to make next, and that is that we have extended the AFL Fantasy Fanatics family, and mainly that's out of need, just simply because Bales is putting out so much bloody content. Me and Jordox can't keep up with him. But I think one of the things that we really wanted to do is we wanted to try and, expand the statistical and we wanted to expand the knowledge, I guess. I mean, I didn't have a great year last year. Bales has been pumping out content. Jordox obviously provides great insight, but we wanted to see if we could provide another dimension and someone that could really assist our listeners to another extent. And I guess, we went to the best, right? We went to the most in-demand member of the AFL fantasy community at the moment. They've got the AFL even trying to get him on the payroll. But let's introduce the newest member of the AFL Fantasy Fanatics community, and that is Jaden Popowski.
Hello.
Great How are you, Jaden?
Yeah, I'm going well. Good little intro there, but yeah, thanks.
Mate, that's what they pay me for, is the pump-ups.
Unless you get at the start and you sort of don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to. Once I know what I'm doing, you point me in the right direction. I'll focus.
We're all going to be a bit rusty, except for Bales because he never stops. But we'll all be a bit rusty on this one,
mate. Well, Jaden, thanks for joining us, mate. I'm wrapped, mate. I'm absolutely wrapped to just have part of the team. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's been going on for you over the off season? There's been a fair bit going on behind the scenes. I know you've been doing a lot of the work with the traders boys in the AFL. So why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, I guess it hasn't really been a massive off season for me. It's kind of been on the whole time. I went over, helped Bales out with you guys for the AFLW. That was pretty fun. I really enjoyed that, and glad to see so many people did well in it. And yeah, since then I've been pretty much working with the AFL fantasy team, helping with the draft rebuild. That's now live, so if you guys want to go and check it out, you can. You can get on, regenerate your leagues from last year, set them up with the new settings and everything that we've kind of put into it. And yeah, the main focus for me was redoing the whole projection system, because once we get those in a better state, we can pretty much introduce a lot more cool stats on top of that. So one of the first ones we're going for is having win probability in your head-to-head matchup. So I think that'll be pretty handy for me, being in quite a few different leagues. It'll give me a quick way to know if I'm going well or if I'm definitely behind the 8 ball and I need to change some things up. So yeah, I'm really pumped that's live. And if you want to go on and have a look, that would be great.
Sounds really
That's
exciting.
awesome. That's awesome. That win probability in a head-to-head matchup. The amount of times you sit there on the Thursday, Friday, look at the head-to-head, see the uniques you've got. Some people even write it down to have that there. It's pretty cool, man. Some good stuff you're doing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing as well. Writing it all down takes forever because all your leagues are different. All of them have different settings. So yeah, it should be really fun.
And then even in the last couple of years, I think when there was a bit of a change to the platform, it even made it even harder because as soon as players started playing, their projected score would come out, and then make it an absolute mess to try and figure out.
Yeah, and we're hoping to have the projections updating live throughout the week, throughout the games as well. So let's say your player was only projected to get 60 and they're on 60 at half time. They're not going to have that 60 as that projection for the rest of the game. So that win probability will be dynamic and updating so you can really follow along, which I think is just so fun. I was doing my testing for it and I just love it. I can't wait to use it.
Now, is that only in the draft platform at the moment?
Yeah, so draft has been rebuilt this off season. So 2025 draft, and yeah, we're working on that still, getting everything into that. And then the plan is for Classic to be rebuilt on the same new platform. So they're kind of separated for now because all the old system was a bit outdated. So it's now been updated onto a new tech stack, is what they call it. So Classic will be updated the year after.
Exciting. Wow, 2026, mate. Exciting news for 2026 as well for Classic players.
Definitely.
All right. Well, I think we should get into some topics to discuss for our audience. Bales, why don't you, I know you've kind of done a whole bunch of notes here, mate. Why don't you kind of walk us through all the things that the listeners, because this is our first podcast for the year, right? So one of the things we thought that we might do, and look, this will partly assist me. I've started my watch list, but I haven't done a huge amount of pre-season research. So might be a lot of people out there in a similar boat to me. So we thought we'd kind of just start off, go through some of the rule changes, the buys, all that kind of stuff, just everything that people need to know and then we'll talk about some players that we need to be putting on that watch list early in our pre-season.
Yeah, so a couple of, obviously, if anyone has sort of just tuned back into fantasy, obviously a couple of little changes ahead of the new season. So firstly is the salary cap's increased to 17.8 million, which is up, I think, a couple of million up on the previous year as well, or something like that. So it's an increase there, which will be good, but then the magic number's also risen, which theoretically you'd think it would be harder to get those top-end premiums in, but we've seen with the forward line, which we'll discuss some key players later on, but a lot of the forward line is value. So I think that it's not going to be too bad to make a team that you want and be happy with. So that's something to note. The buy rules for the early season buys and mid-season buys, essentially they're exactly the same as last year. So best 18 for all the buys, early and mid-season, 2 trades for each of the early season buys, and then you get 3 trades for the mid-season buys. With the early season buys, the only sort of change we've had is instead of the early buys being stretched over 4 weeks with 2 teams on each of those buys, there's 3 weeks. 2 of those weeks, 2 teams are on buy. The other week, there's 4 teams on buy. So that's making it a little bit more tricky for round 3, where you've got some fantasy relevant teams in Brisbane, Collingwood, Geelong, and the other team escapes me off the top of my head. Anyone want to help me out? Well, who's the other team that's on buy? Sydney. So they're the 4 teams on buy. A lot of
no way you're looking at us, Bales. You're the
yeah. So those 4 teams, and it'll be particularly a bit problematic with defence, which we'll get into throughout the preseason and talk with some players there. And then the mid-season buys, because there's an extra mid-season buy, there's an extra trade. So that could be quite big in terms of people completing their teams early. We obviously heard Tom chatting with Holmes on the Holmes Files, saying he could have completed his team essentially like at round 12, round 13, but he obviously put it back a couple of weeks with a couple extra trades he wanted to do. So yeah, and we saw obviously with Chris who won it, he had 20, 23 and 24 premiums in his team. So it's going to be potentially even quicker that we're going to be completing our teams, which means luxury trade season is even longer. So I know Mitch is not going to be a fan of that one. In terms of sub rule, unfortunately, the sub rule is staying again for another season. So
I can believe that.
we got to deal with rookies potentially being sub, or the risk of being sub, which is frustrating because all the coaches and players that we thought were on board saying they didn't want it, but the AFL wasn't on the same board, so they're keeping it in. So hopefully, Jordox, you and Eloise can get the sub account is reactivated for 2025. I'm sure we'll see in the new year if that's going to happen or not there. In terms of that, though, they're sort of the main changes, and most other things is exactly the same. I don't believe we're not going to have fantasy in opening round. It will start from round 1, and it'll be all the same things as last year, where you get the double price increase and everything like that. So something to watch there. But they're sort of the changes ahead of the new season, Tim.
Awesome. Well, we did expect that sub rule to go away. We thought there might be a significant change to the way that buyers have done, but they kind of went the other way. Rather than shorting them up, they kind of extended them out. So, but I think the other thing, not really that it impacts, well, not much, not really from a strategy point of view, but it will impact us during the season, is also Thursday night games the whole way through the season. So, I don't know about what you guys think, but I love Thursday night footy. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. So, love watching a game of footy on Thursday night. It means we're just going to have to move and shake a little bit on after teams on Thursday, but I think we'll just get into that cadence of having to do it every single week, and
I think we're pretty used to it. Hey,
especially after
most for years.
Yeah, it was most of last year anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have got a couple of what do they call them? The questions where what do they call them, Bars? Bloody hell, I'm so out of touch.
What
do they call them? Where people ask questions, where they pay money to ask questions.
Super chat.
Super chats.
That's what you're trying to get.
We weren't even close.
So we got exactly. We got a call from Tim Ashworth. So Tim Ashworth was wishing us all Merry Christmas there. So thank you very much, Tim, for sending us a chat discussion. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, mate, and Happy New Year and that. And then we do have a question, but I want to leave that for later. It's a good question asking about rookies in each line. So, but I guess touching on what we were just chatting about there, did any of you guys want to sort of discuss it a bit further, that whether it be the buys, the extra trade, the salary cap, anything like that? Feel free, anyone to go if they want to discuss any of that, and we've had a bit of a chat.
couple of things that stood out to me. I mean, the sub rule staying is obviously a pain in the butt, but I think they could have, at the very least, changed the way the sub is announced and made clubs do it on a Thursday night. That would have been handy, but as it stands, it's exactly the same as last year, 90 minutes before the bounce. And then with the increased salary, you got increased pricing of players, as you mentioned, with the magic number. So I thought it was really interesting at how many $1 million players there are this year. So I guess for those just logging on for the first time, don't freak out at how many $1 million players are there. I call $1 million players the new 900K. So last year, to be $1 million, you had to have averaged, I think, something like 105 the year before. Now it's 97. So if you averaged a flat 97, you're $1 million player. So it's all relative, but it's pretty whack. And then you've got, the buys, like you said, the extra one in the middle. All of a sudden we've got the opportunity to use 15 trades across 5 weeks. It's just going to give hope to those who haven't got their squad in order before the buys, knowing, hey, I've got this 5-week period where I can literally rotate 50% of the squad. So it's pretty cool.
The only other thing that I would probably add to all of that is just, this is going to become really important when you're picking your rookies, right? Like you can't afford to have rookies that are going to be subs sitting on the bench because they're not going to make any money. So, it's going to be another season where probably we're chasing value in those kind of underpriced premiums and those mid prices, and certainly being happy to pay up for rookies that we think are going to be in the best 22.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be interesting to see how it all goes. But Jane, I want to ask you about the salary caps, obviously with the increase. I don't know if you know roughly off the top of your head what the average sort of price increase per player is, because I think that'd be interesting to know, obviously, with all the increases in pricing for the players.
Well, I can just divide what we had last year by. So it's 13% or 14% more expensive across the board. However, I do want to point out that if you take the salary cap, the new salary cap of 17.8, and you divide by the magic number, you get this nice little figure where you can figure out what your team is kind of priced at. So we know Rowan Marshall's priced at 117 and so on and so on. If you make your team and add them all up, you should get a nice figure. For the last few years, that's hovered pretty closely to 1750. So your team is priced at 1750 points. You should be able to beat that. Like we almost cracked 1950, 2000 in week 1 because we're pretty good at it, picking some underpriced players. This year, the 1750s dropped down 15 points to 1735. So there's 15 less points to play around with. That can be the difference between fitting in Rowan Marshall compared to Tim English. So there's 15 points off your team gone this year.
Awesome. That's exactly what we want to hear from you, Jaden. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, so it's a little bit harder. I think, probably done on purpose with the extra trade that you get this year with another buy round. I think it opens it up more at the start of the year, and because the buy round from the early buys last year has moved to the middle of the year, kind of. We've got 3 at the start and 5 in the middle instead of 4 and 4. I think the start of the year is just going to be so much more fun because there's one more week where you don't have best 18. You're going to be relying on your whole squad to score. So I think it probably rewards you a bit more if you do have that kind of squad mentality and you're doing well to make money, compared to last year where you could just pick whoever and like you could stack the primos and have best 18 every week and you'd be flying. So I think it kind of rewards that a bit earlier in the year.
And I've also had the experience the last couple of years as well, is that we've had a fair bit of cash. Like we've had a lot of underpriced players as well. And it's kind of been easy to sort of fill your team out. Whereas, in previous years, you had to be a little bit careful with your money. So, maybe it's kind of just bringing things back into a little bit more balance there.
Yeah, definitely. Both years I've picked and I've had 900, 800K. So my team right now has 800K left over. I don't know what to do with it. Obviously, it'll be used, but it just doesn't feel right to use it. Like it's just a bit too easy. So I think that's probably a step in the right direction. But yeah.
There we go. You've had it first. Jaden Popowski, fantasy is too easy.
But then, so the other thing that with the bye weeks is that last year the way it worked was we had obviously round 1, and then believe it was like round 4 that were the 2 weeks where there was no best 18, where you had gather round and the round 1. Whereas this year, round 1's normal, but then you got rounds 2, 3, and 4 are all best 18. So we talked, a few people to them last year about you could have gone and maybe started a Dane Zorko or started Fife wasn't end up being a good pick, but you could have started him. Elliot, you could have started a few of these riskier picks because best 18 was there. But it's even arguably easier this year because you've got 3 weeks in a row where you don't have to worry about it. So all you got to do is worry about what they're going to do in week 1 and hope they're fine. And then after that, you got 3 weeks where if something was to happen, you'll be covered by best 18. So I think people might be able to go for an extra maybe mid-price or a riskier pick than they might not sort of normally go for if they end up scoring really well in opening round and may have a low break even and got the buy in round 4, for example, or whatever. So that'll be interesting from what I took from those early buys as well. So that's something to note there. Any other discussion points from the things, or do we want to chat through some players of interest?
Sure. Yeah, let's get to the players.
Cool. Yeah. So we'll discuss a few players that we're interested in. Then if you guys are watching live on YouTube or X or Facebook, wherever you're watching from, then put them in the live chat and we can discuss those players a little bit towards the end there. But we'll just discuss a few players from here. So I guess we'll start in defence, which is I believe the hardest line to fill out so far in the preseason. It might be a little bit easier once we get close to the season. A few options present themselves as underpriced, or if they're a bit more of a premium and everything like that. Maybe opening round decides that. But Jaden, is there any defenders that sort of you're interested in? Could be like locked in, sort of, and obviously with the caveat of locked in being a long time to go. They're not necessarily locked in, but who you're very keen on. So when you give us maybe 2 names that you're keen on in defence?
Yeah, I'm quite keen on Jaden Short. He's pretty much been there the whole time as that kind of underpriced primo. He's a lot cheaper than what the premium defenders and what he's been in the past. So priced at 80.5. I think the Richmond backline will be seeing it a bit, and hopefully he can be the beneficiary of that. Richmond have been kicked out of that round 0 spot, so back to round 1 for them. So no issues picking him at the moment.
Yeah, which is really good run. I think Dan Rioli is obviously now up at Gold Coast, and also even Liam Baker to a certain extent, not as much, but every now and again he go back in defence. So I think there's a few points there that he's got in terms of kick-out points as well. I think he'll take a lot. Richmond, you'd expect to struggle, so he's already in my initial squad, and I'm a big fan of his. Of him. So what we'll do, we'll sort of go around the table there. I'll go to Jordox now for one as well. Defender that you're keen on, Jordox?
Sorry, my internet's playing funny buggers. Just say what we're doing again.
Defenders is a defender of interest. So, if you heard Jaden was saying about Jaden Short, so is there a defender, Jordan, someone that you keep an eye on, or?
No. I've got Matty Roberts as someone I wanted to talk about. I don't have him in my initial squad, but I think we saw some things last year, some games where you could just see this guy carving out a career as a pretty fantasy friendly guy. So it's one of those guys. He's not super cheap because he averaged all right, but it's one of those ones if you can jump on before he becomes a fully fledged primo and everyone else does, I reckon he's someone I'm looking at for potentially starting.
Yeah, and he's one of those players where there's a lot of those he's on the round 3 buy, and there's a lot of names. There's Callum Mills who's on the same team. There's a few defenders that...
It'd be hard to have him and Mills, and I can't not have Mills at this point. So that's probably the tricky component to it.
Yeah, exactly. Tim, I know you've started your research. Is there a defender name that you've looked at and you're keen on this early?
Well, Jordox just kind of mentioned it right there. And I thought, there's a couple I'm looking at. I'll save some names for everyone else as well. But, in that kind of price range. You know, I mean, we're talking Jaden Short at 825. We're talking Matt Roberts at 780. Well, we also got Callum Mills there at 759, right? So I think they're going to be three fairly relatively popular, you know, those kind of mid-price players that people are going to be looking for in that defensive line. I mean, there's questions, I think, over all of them. You know, I mean, I think even sometimes when Callum Mills kind of got back into that side and played a little bit last year, he just didn't score very well. So, but you think with a different kind of pre-season under his belt, he should be able to, you know, maybe.
Yeah, he was coming from a long way back, wasn't he, Mills? And it wasn't really that much of a surprise to see him not, you know, really hit his straps. But new coach, hopefully a full pre-season, and you know, he's a proud player. I'm sure he'd feel. Not that he owes the squad to be fully fit, because it was just an innocuous thing that caused him to miss so much of the season. But he'll be hitting preseason hard, I reckon. Yep.
No, it's definitely someone to keep an eye on. Another player that I'm keen on watching in the preseason is another player on the round 3 bye. So we've got 3 of them that are on the round 3 bye. So Harry Perryman is who I'm looking at. He's obviously moved over to Collingwood now. I expect him to be playing in the midfield role. Preseason watch, obviously, to see his role, and he plays opening round, so we get a look at him. But I think he's moved to Collingwood to play midfield. I can't imagine he would have gone to Collingwood just to play in defence again, especially when they got Dan Houston as well. So he's playing that midfield role. We've seen him average over 85 in that role. And going to Collingwood, I expect to be the second guy in there with Dacos, and then obviously De Goey being in there, and then the full line as well. So I'm keen to watch him in the preseason. He's 759. It's going to be tough. I don't know if you can have both Perriman and Mills, and even if you add in maybe another one, you've got Kitty Coleman as well, who's going to be a pretty popular pick at 521k. I don't know if you can have more than 2 of them. So it's going to come down to opening round, and maybe if all of them go big, you have to sort of plan maybe to trade one out in round 3, because it's going to be too many, and then you're going to have maybe another player or 2 in other positions. So we've got to watch out for that as well in defence, because I think that's going to be the problematic one. And the other thing I found as well is those top-priced defenders. There's a few value options that we like, but then you probably got to pick maybe 1, if not 2 of those big defenders. There's not a huge amount of them I'm a huge fan of in terms of presenting a lot of value. So I've got Jack Sinclair, for example, sitting as my D1, because he's a guy that I could see maybe a couple of points. Whereas you look at all the list, Harry Sheasel plays probably more forward. He's not. I don't know if he's going to average that 112, 114 or whatever he did last year. Whitfield is at top of his price, whether he goes and stays that or drops down a bit. Nick Newman, Luke Ryan, the list goes on for all these defenders that have had really good years, but necessarily aren't. They're probably priced at arguably their best, or maybe they're even a tiny bit overpriced or whatever. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all goes to start the season and what people do with their starting squads. We'll move to the midfield now, and then once we get through all positions, we'll do a couple of the ones that people have suggested in the chat, so keep them coming through. I'm going to send a few interesting names that we haven't quite discussed just yet. So Jaden, midfielder, who are you keen on in the midfield ahead of the season?
Definitely Tom Green for me. Just straight in, pretty happy to pick him, even with the buy. I just think he's only priced at 100, and I think with that GWS midfield, there's really not a lot in there. They've kind of had a lot of losses over the last few years, and he's just been right there the whole time. And I think we saw kind of in the back end of the year that he opened up his transition play a bit, which I really like to see. So I'm hoping that he can do a bit more of that in the coming year, because he's obviously a pretty high stoppage player, but some of those big scores he had, he got the marks around the ground even in D50. So I'm hoping that he could put it all together, and I think it's one of those ones where you could imagine him being the top scorer in the game because of how the other midfielders in his team work around him. So it's kind of like I'm thinking how Andy Brayshaw came on the other year and they really didn't have a lot else there. Something like that. So I'm hopeful.
He's still so young too. Only, 23? And his best is ahead of him, Green. So, he's certainly a guy that could be the number 1 scorer for sure.
Exactly. The one thing I want to ask you about, Jane, obviously you mentioned there about the early buy. So he's got that early buy in round 2. So the first of the early season buys, that's not a huge sort of turn off for you, obviously being a bit underpriced when you've got a few other names around that price that we might even mention. I know I'll be mentioning one of them if one of you boys don't. So there's a couple of guys around there. Would you rather still go Tom Green in with that early season buy? Because I had a look as well. He actually plays Hawthorn in round 3, which we know Connor Nash does some jobs. And people are probably thinking, Bales, you're already looking at the fixture. I started looking at the fixture when it came out. So, yeah. So, Jade, what are your sort of thoughts with Tom Green and the early buy?
Yeah, I think fine with me. I don't know if I'm looking at any Gold Coast players, so I'm not worried about having not enough players. And best 18, like I said it before about the game being easy. That's what best 18 does. Like, it makes it so easy that anyone can go well, and it sucks for people like us where we're pretty switched on to fantasy, and people who just put 18 scorers on the buck can do better. So I'm keen to pick Tom Green. I'm not worried about having 18 players because I'm pretty confident I will. I don't think we'll be picking 6 Gold Coast players like we were thinking of doing last year.
No, it won't. It won't be 2011 again. That whole conversation brings up something that I did want to talk about from the start about, lessons learned from last year, because this is now year 2 of opening round and these early buys. So what did we learn, or what did the individual coaches learn? For me, I learned, and something I really want to write down and remember for this year, 25, is if I like a player, I'm not going to be scared by the early buy. It affected the way I started my team last year, and I regretted it. I can't think of any examples. Would be good if I could. Maybe a Whitfield I would have had, but I didn't.
And the Freo defender.
Jordan Clark.
Sorry?
Jordan Clark.
I remember, tossing over those 2 players, and letting buys make my decision.
And I think with the mid-season buys, it makes more sense because you've got a whole group of players and, but with the best 18, and if you've only got 2 teams on the buy and you're given best 18, that's certainly what I'm looking at this year. If I like someone, I'm going to get him.
The thing I like with if you have at least one player for each of the early season buys, well, I haven't heard enough discussion around it as well, is that especially in the midfield, if you got Tom Green, people are saying, you've got to have one player to cover him. You actually get 2 because Tom Green's got the buy. You can use him as a loop. So, for example, if you've got, I'll use Harvey Langford and Sid Drake, for example, the 2 rookies that we expect to play round 1. There's obviously a few others. If you're starting one of them on the bench, you get to loop him and see how he goes. And if he doesn't go well, you can play another rookie on field. So you actually get 2 bites at it. And if one of them can get an 80 or an 85 and have a good week, then that sort of can cover it as well. So I think that's another thing as well with the you can actually loop a little bit in those early season buys. So sometimes it can be good to have just maybe 1 or 2 on that buy. So that's definitely something to notice there. We'll keep tracking.
Just before we move on, just going back to the defenders though, we were talking about having those 3 players all being on that round 3 buy. Like that, an example of what I'm thinking about is not worrying about it too much.
Yeah,
even if I don't have cover, I've still got 18 players on the park.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I guess because Kitty Coleman's obviously probably one we're not going to worry about because he's so cheap that a rookie will be able to cover him fine. But obviously with those other ones, a bit of their sort of that value price. Interesting to see what sort of people go with and how many we start. But it's going to be very, very interesting to see what people's teams look like in defence. Jordox, midfielder that you like.
There's a midfielder I like, and I like him so much, I'm going to make a call nice and early that he'll be the number 1 scoring player for 2025 or number 1 average. Depends. I'll change my answer in 12 months' time. But all jokes aside, I think if Sam Walsh has a full preseason and doesn't miss a trick, he has got the weaponry in him to be our number 1 scoring player for 2025, and he is my first picked.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I don't mind it. He's got Richmond round 1 as well. Good matchup. I know MJ was talking about that on his team reveal as well. But that's the other thing. George, I was chatting about this to you, and you were saying obviously how he hasn't had a full preseason for the last couple of years. He's had obviously back issues. He started most of preseason last year and then came in sort of in the new year and got going and still averaged 106. The year before he obviously missed the first 2 months of the season or sort of the better part of that.
If you look at how he started, so last year he missed the first month, but then he's gone 145, 101, 106, 143, a lower game than 2 more big tons. So he hits the ground running, but then he runs out of steam because he just doesn't have the fitness. And the same happened in, I think, 2023. Same thing. He missed the first month, came in and went ton, 5 in a row, and then slows down. So I think if he's got a full preseason behind him, he'll be going gangbusters.
Yep. I don't mind that pick. I like it. Tim, any midfielders that you keep an eye on?
Yeah. Well, look, I've got a couple that I'm looking at. Well, I mean, let's talk about. No, I was going to say Clayton Oliver, but I'm actually more interested to talk about Will Day. I'm interested to get an idea about what you guys think about Will Day.
Yep, I've got him in the squad at the moment. I think everyone knows, what he could do. I think that the only if or asterisk at this stage with him is the body, and we haven't seen him put it all together yet.
Yeah, but there's a couple. Once again, it's that kind of price range, like Clayton Oliver, Will Day. I mean, another person that kind of attracts my attention is Will Ashcroft.
Sam Doherty, another one.
Yeah,
potentially.
And then of course, Bales, you might want to talk about him a little bit as well. Isaac Cumming.
Well, yeah, and you can probably add James Peatling into that conversation as well. I know that I'll just again shout out to MJ as well, chatting about this on his team review, saying that Peatling was actually it wasn't MJ. No, sorry, it was Darren Wildlash and Pods when I was watching his team review. He was saying about how Peatling, when he played over 40% CBAs last year, he was averaging about 88 points a game. So, and he's priced at in the low 60s. So that's a good amount of value, and you think he's probably got more responsibility at the Crows. So he's one to watch, and coming could be this year's Riley Bonner, but be even better. Could be a guy that goes close enough to that 90, might even go a tiny bit more. We've seen that from him in the past, that you can keep him for a fair while. So, yeah, both those guys are, I think, are certainly two names to watch. There's a lot of those players, as you said, that are in that price range that we're probably going to have a bit of a watch on. Maybe Will Day, he's first. He's got obviously the early buy, but if he puts up a 110, 120, probably going to have to start with him. Whereas if he puts up a lower score with the early buy, maybe you go for a Peatling or you go for a Doherty or an Oliver or someone instead if you don't have them. So it's going to be interesting to see what we do in our midfields. But yeah, I like the Will Day pick, and the Crows boys could also be a couple of picks there. The player I'm going to say, I'm going to talk about Tim Taranto. So Tim Taranto is a guy I'm pretty keen on. Obviously, he averaged a 95.5 last year. They included a couple of injury-affected games near the end of the year where he got obviously concussed with the Bedford tackle. Obviously, we heard about that for the whole week with the challenging and the suspension. And then he also got injured against, I believe it was Collingwood. I think he did a quad there. But he scored like 145 in the final round of the season last year against Gold Coast. So that's just showing his potential. There's going to be even more responsibility on him this year with a couple of Tigers leaving, namely obviously Bolton and Baker, who had CBAs at times, and Bolton obviously a lot. I think Taranto someone's got to score for them in there. I think Taranto is going to be that guy, and I think at price at 95, I think he's got at least 10 points, and we know that he can go more than that. So he is someone that I'm going to be keeping a close eye on. Moving to the rucks, I normally go to Jaden first.
Did we get a mid from Jaden?
Yes. Yep.
Who did we get?
Restart.
Tom Green.
Was it?
Did we get a defender from Jaden?
Yeah, Jaden Shaw.
We did. Oh man. I must have been
How are we going?
He's first to go. We're asking him first because he's the expert. That's right. We should pay attention, Jordox.
Yeah. Carry on.
But yes, we're going to go to the rucks now, and I normally go Jaden first, but I'm going first because Jordox knows this, Tim knows this, even Jaden knows this. Well, I've talked about everyone this. I've been steadfast on this from when the season 2024 finished. Set and forget this year. Ryan Marshall, Tristan Sherry, that's my call. I think that's the optimal starting two. And a lot of people say you're spending so much money in the rucks, right? We use two for stars. I've always liked set and forget, along with, I know Holmesy, obviously another big advocate for set and forget. But when you have in the rucks, we have so many forced trades each year based on a player getting injured or a player not doing what they need to, and if they're like a value price, everything like that. Whereas Marshall's been top scoring ruck for 2 years in a row now, and he's been right up there for a number of years since having that solo ruck role. There's no real worries with him. He's actually got a decent run for ruck matchups as well to start the year. And Tristan Cherry, there's no one on the list to compete with ruck time with him. like Coleman Jones / Brent Teague will take the standard 15-20% of the chop out, but Cherry's going to do what he's going to do. I don't see his tackling game going away. That's where he builds his game on. North will improve, and maybe there's not going to be the 10 tackles or whatever Cherry got a game, but I just think that he will be able to put up good numbers, and I think he could even be slightly underpriced based on the start of the year. He was sort of getting used to being the solo ruck, and then obviously back half of the year we saw what he did. And even his marks increased as well, which is the other reason why he was starting to put up those 140s, 150s, 160s. So I'm a big fan of both. I don't think you can start Cherry and DeConing just because they share the same mid-season buys. Yes, I've already looked at that as well. Looked at everything. So yeah, they're the two that I'm a fan of as well. And I don't like many of the other value options as well. Question marks over a few of those names there, which we'll discuss throughout the preseason as well. But I don't want to ramble on too much, so we'll go to Jaden as well. Ruck that you're keen on, and feel free if you want to chat about one of the expensive rucks as well.
Yeah, I'm very hesitant with set and forget. Like, my draft strategy is just never take a ruck, like, because they all play the same role, and there's one on every team, and like, I get the idea of having to use force trades in the ruck, but like, that's no different to me than using force trades anywhere else in the team. So I'm pretty keen on not paying up. I do have Marshall there at the moment, just because the fixtures are all right. Cherry's not good at all. So it's definitely Marshall over Cherry for me. Other one I've got there at the moment is Sean Darcy. He's got 2 injury-affected games in his price, and I think, like, if he can get over the little niggles that he's been having and continues to have at the moment, like, if he can get over that, I think he's one that I'm pretty keen on.
Yeah, I like the Darcy one. Starts with Geelong too.
Yeah,
there you go, Bale. See, I've got my fixtures all sorted as well. I think Darcy's really interesting. I mean, his career, he needs a solid season. He needs a year where he stays on the park. And I don't think anyone would suggest otherwise, that if Sean Darcy plays every game, he's a solid scorer. So he's absolute value.
Yeah, and we talked about before as well with the opening round buys, where you've got rounds 2 to 4, best 18. There's no week in between. If Darcy gets through the week 1, you've got that best 18 cover for the next 3 weeks to cover him. So that's another interesting point. And when I say set and forget rucks, I'm very set on it. But again, anything can happen. It's 3 months out for the season. Plenty of water going on the bench before.
I think
it could change.
Let's just say now, I think there's nothing we can say on this pod that we can't change our minds on in 3 months. So when we are in March and Bales has a value R2, you can't come at it and say, back in December, you said set and forget. You changed your tune. I think with the set and forget, I don't think anyone's going to mount an argument that Marshall and Cherry are not going to be the top 2 ruck scorers for the season. It's just whether you can build that value elsewhere with a different player. And for me, I love to have a bit of a wacky, risky R2 most years. I just think set and forgets, it works, but it's just not as fun as picking someone. A couple of guys that I'm interested in. I mean, Jordan Sweet had a really good finish to the year when he was given the number 1 role. So I think that's a bit of a wait and see on where Soldo's at. He nearly left the club, so he's back and he'll be gunning hard for that spot. So healthy competition for Sweet. I think he's up for it, and I think he'll be their number 1, and he's one to watch. And then the other one is, long forgotten, but Flynn was traded to the Eagles just over 12 months ago now, and he was going to be their number 1, and he had a shocking injury at the start of the year, and he just never found his way in. So he's priced, was he 622, 620K as a potential number 1 ruck. I think if he's fit, it'll be him over Bailey Williams. He could end up being my value R2.
Yeah, don't mind it. A preseason watch for sure with all the value that he's showing. Tim, ruck that you're interested in?
Look, my ears kind of pricked up about TDK with Roy's team. So has Pitt gone out of that team, has he?
No, he's still there.
Yeah.
So,
but you think TDK's got the number 1 ruck mantle now?
There was a stat I saw somewhere on X or whatever that I think Carlton, when De Koning was solo up level like 8-1 or 9-1, whereas when
I saw that.
would have been 9-1, and when Pitney was playing, it was like 4-6 or something like that. So it was pretty sort of fit, like a lot better with De Koning. So we sort of project that De Koning will be the solo ruck, but I guess the flag is that Pitney any week could come in and does that sort of destroy the value for De Koning? But yeah, something to watch. But,
I really did like Jaden's Sean Darcy pick though. Hey, I mean, he was 110 ruckman not that long ago. And then obviously he just had a lot of problems with his body. If they can get that right, I mean, look at Dane Zorko last year. There could be a lot of upside on someone like him. And I'm in agreement. Like I think you got to be finding more value. And I know in the ruck line, obviously there's not a lot of options, so there's a stronger argument for set and forget. But I think you got to be trying to find at least some value. So yeah, the old Marshall Cherry, as much as I'd like to, it just seems like way too much money.
Yeah,
it does. I reckon though, once you've done your squad, like even Jaden, you were saying with all that cash left over, I think we're gonna, by the time we finished our squad, we're gonna have that money left over, and I think a lot of people are going to end up doing set and forget because the money will be there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I was going to say with the value in the forward line. There's a lot of value in the mids as well. We've talked about, and even defence. A couple of value players there. I think there's going to be spare cash left over. And the final point I'll say is that when you sort of look at it, when it's like, say you got Cherry and Oliver, for example, so Oliver has a good preseason. You could have those two, or people on the other end would have like Brayshaw and like a Flynn or a Sean Darcy or something like that. I'd personally, at this very early stage, would prefer going for an Oliver and the set and forget ruck than the other way around. But again, as I said, plenty of time to go before the preseason, plenty of water to go under the bridge. Moving to the forward line, final position there. So Jaden, who's a forward that you're keen on? Obviously, there's a lot of forwards that people are going to be locking in, but who's the one that sort of takes it for you?
I'm not sure if it's like a lock yet, but I just want to bring up like Jack McRae, because I was like absolutely like as low as you can get on him last year, and people were using that number 1 draft picks on him in draft, and I was loving it. I'm pretty keen to do some research on him, and I think I'll pop out an article on it to just see what he's done over the last few years, because it's pretty clear that like while the role has gone, it's more about his spread around the ground that struggled, and he did have some big scores last year where he did bring that back. So I'm optimistic of picking him this year. Definitely not on team avoid or anything. So yeah, he's an interesting one for me, and I'm really keen to get into the numbers to figure out kind of how he went last year compared to my expectations. I did like a poll of like what he would average, and everyone was saying 90, 100, and I was like 1 or 2% people voted for 70. So I was thinking, oh, come on, guys.
I remember that actually. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what you can put together in that article, Jaden, because I think a lot of people are naturally just saying, oh, it was Bevo. He got Bevoed, that old catchphrase. But I wonder how much of it is to do with McRae himself and how he's aging, which is such a strange word to use on a young man. But you know what I mean, in football terms.
Yeah, I think we expect him as well to play midfield. That's what they've drafted him to be, and that's all the talk from St Kilda.
Brad Crouch is gone now.
Seb Ross be listed as well.
Yeah, I think he's going to be good. And there's going to be very little risk in starting a player like that, because it's going to be quite unanimous. In fact, I'd argue a lot of the forward line is going to be pretty unanimous across the fantasy world, but we'll see.
It also sounds like Jack Sinclair's going to be playing pretty much full-time halfback as well, so that takes him out of the midfield.
Yeah. And they've got the good mid-season buy as well, round 13. They've only them and Freo, so something to watch. But I will mention his ownership in a sec as well, because a lot of those, I'll quickly go through the ownership once we finish the forwards, whatever, the early ownership stats on here. Jordox, forward that you're keen on?
Look, I'd like to have the balls to start this guy, and we'll see what the preseason brings. Because I look at my forward line, and I look at almost every forward line that's been posted up on the socials, which is great, by the way. It's good that everyone puts their teams up and gets the conversation started. But the forward lines are all very vanilla, and I'm just thinking, who's the one that no one's talking about? Who's the one that we're all missing? And, midway through next year, wow, if you started with this player, you've got the edge. And I'm pretty bullish and biased on Isaac Rankin getting through a full season without injuries, without suspensions. I feel like the Crows are going to keep him in the midfield a similar amount to what we saw in 2024, maybe even more. He's dangerous in front of goals. I know they need him to be kicking the snags, but Josh Rochelle will take another step this year. Neil Bullen's come in. I just can see Rankin getting the midfield time and staying fit and being not necessarily like the top scorer or anything, but just a point of difference. So when he has a big week, that can be a chance to climb.
I like that you said about Neil Bullen, because I remember that I think it was would have been probably David King. Obviously, we know he loves Isaac Rankin, but I think he was talking about with the Neil Bullen trade that Neil Bullen did this with Petrarca, right? Petrarca would be in the CBAs. That's what Rankin could do. And then Neil Bullen is the one that pushes a little bit more close to stoppage, and Rankin goes back more towards goal and unlocks that multi sort of potential of being in the midfield, but then also going forward and kicking goals. So, yep, no, definitely one to keep an eye on. I'm keen, obviously, as a Crows fan, to see him go. 9.4% is his current ownership. So a little bit higher than probably what I actually thought it would be. But, yeah, one to be watching nonetheless. Tim, forward for you.
Let's think. Look, I'm pretty excited about Mateus Philippou. Yeah, I love a young pup kind of getting his opportunity, and I mean, obviously a very talented young, high draft pick. Been kind of playing obviously a lot more forward of the ball, but then towards the end of last year started to get his opportunity with Ross in that midfield and was pumping out some tons. So. I kind of think with a lot of the moves that were made by Ross, in the off season in terms of their personnel, is kind of really just getting that team more in a state that he really wants it, and I think that's messing around a lot with that midfield, that engine room, right? So obviously we're talking about Jack McRae coming in, we're talking about Sinclair going back, we're talking about Seb Ross coming out, we're talking about Brad Crouch coming out. So I think Mateus Philippou is going to have a pretty big role in that midfield, and obviously he's pretty underpriced as well. What's his probably priced around that sort of low 60s, something along those lines. So, mate, if he starts pumping out 90s or a ton, then he'll be.
Well, he played 4 games in that midfield role. He scored 117, 93, 96, 119, and a lot of those games were with weeks of break on each side with various injuries. I don't think we could be any hotter on him. I think the only thing he needs, he needs a new nickname. I mean, we kept calling him the Pooh last year, and I'm not going to be able to do that this new season with a straight face. So I propose we call him Philly Steak. We'll just call him Philly Steak from now on.
Oh, man, I love the Pooh. I mean, it reminds me of Philip, the Scud, right? So it's a wicked nickname.
Well, the one thing I was going to mention, obviously, with Philippou was last year we're talking about like the scores he had last year, and he's obviously being underpriced. But like these are just some of the scores that he scored last year after coming back into the team. Obviously, started the year, was dropped, had some really good form in the VFL, and was also a sub, I believe, in round 10 where he scored just 26. But he came back, had a 4-week stretch. Obviously, we know he missed a couple of games in between and stuff, but he scored 117, 93, 96, and 119. That's a 4-week stretch of playing that midfield role. I think that there's some good value there with him. So I'm a big fan of him, and I think a lot of people are going to be jumping on him there as well.
And what about the nickname, Bales? Are you going to call him Philly Steak?
Not sure yet. I'll have to look at what nickname what we'll do sort of in the season. But the Pooh at the moment is what I'll go with. But yeah, obviously the forward I'm going to go with is not going to be one. The two we'd be remiss if we didn't quickly mention them. Bailey Smith, obviously very, very cheap, 598k. It's a gift. He's in our forward lines. He's the most selected player in the game for a reason. He's a very good pick. And then the second most selected player, Caleb Daniel, fantasy friendly role at North Melbourne, 514k. It's again, just another gift, I think, as well, with all those sub games last year. So I think those two. But the guy I'm really keen on, Tim, one of your new Eagles, Liam Baker. I haven't heard it. He's been a guy, I think, a bit like Rankin, that hasn't been discussed as much. He's actually got lower ownership than Rankin, which is interesting at 6.7%. they've pretty much said that he's even playing off half back. We've seen a lot of West Coast players playing in that defence, that distributing role, have been good scorers in the past. We've seen Duggan have a number of years being a premium defender. We even saw Witherden at times be a good scoring defender. Shanahan was a good scoring defender a lot. And then even going back all the way, like your Bo Waters and guys like that. So I think there's a position there for him. I think he'll take some kick-ins. And playing off half-back, I think he's going to be a good scorer. So one I'm watching in the preseason for sure, but priced at 78.5. I'm pretty keen on him as a bit of a differential to like maybe a Horn Francis that people might go with, or Dylan Moore, for example, if people are going to go for a little bit more expensive. But yeah, that's who I like there. I'll just quickly mention ownership as well, and then we'll get into a couple of the requested players, and then we'll end up wrapping up. But in terms of ownership, the top 10 so far, no surprise, Bailey Smith, 67, just over 67%. Caleb Daniel, 57.7%. Levi Ashcroft at 3, just under 55%. Kitty Coleman as well, 54.7%. Tristan Cherry, 53%. So that could be another one where if you don't start with him and he starts going off really big, do you start with him because so many people are starting? That'd be interesting. Jack McRae, just under 53%. Bo Allen, another Eagle, heavily selected there, just over nearly 50.5%. So he is another popular player there. Matthias Philippou at 8, just under 47%. Draper at 9, 45.6%. I'm pretty keen on Jordox Euro as well as a new Crow. And Jagger Smith is rounding out the top 10 at 44.85% there as well. And a few other players over 40% that are rookies that will be interesting. So they're the top 10 sort of in terms of ownership so far there. We'll go through a couple of requested players. So, and I'll start off with the first one, which is I've lost who mentioned him in the chat here. James Sicily is who I was going to mention. He was asked a few times in the chat here. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on Sicily? Obviously, a few injury reports of Cal Shadir, maybe interrupted start, and Mitch Lewis as well has had a few injury niggles. Is there any worry for you about any forward time, or do you think with Brass and Battle there that he can maybe return back to a near 100+ averaging or even above 100+ averaging defender?
Yeah, I said
Jaden.
Oh, Jaden, sorry. Well, everyone was quiet. I'll just speak up. Go, Jaden. Oh, you're on mute. Go.
That would help. I'm not too concerned about Sicily. Probably not someone I'd pick. I think Hawthorn are still going with that very spread scoring area. Like Dylan Moore was their top scorer last year, 92. So I think that might continue. They have that kind of spread out scoring. I think Sicily could go forward at times when needed, like in the fourth quarter. Probably not someone I'd pick. I don't really know about draft either if I would go there. So, yeah, probably not for me. But because he's still going to be up there priced at 90. So it's not like he's coming off his year off like he was a couple of years ago, and he's just like a very easy pick. So I think we've got enough options in defence.
So he's got the early buy in round 4. Is he someone that you'd prefer to watch for the opening round in the first 3 weeks? And if he's showing these signs that you'd be happy to jump on in round 5, or maybe his opening round, if he plays well, is that going to be a bit of a deciding factor, or what are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, like if he can come out in opening round and do what Whitfield did, and just take all the kick-ins, like basically Whitfield getting like opposition to miss on purpose, just to get kick-ins. If Sicily's doing that, yeah, like what Whitfield did, pick him straight away after opening round. Just from like, it's just an easy way to make money, I guess. Yep,
exactly. Jordox, we got a question. So Woodpecker asking about Riley Sanders and Matt Kennedy. So a couple of dogs, obviously a new dog and a young dog that might get some opportunity with a few outs there. Any interest for you? You know, obviously a lot of forwards there. We might be locking in 3 or 4, but what are your thoughts on those two? Maybe someone you fit in.
Yeah, I like Sanders. I think that'd be a really courageous call to start someone like that. I think he could really put a bit on his average and make you some money. Matt Kennedy's tough because I like him, and when he got the trade, when that trade went through, I thought that's really good. I mean, not sure the Bulldogs would have been my preferred destination for him, considering players that struggled to get the role. But Kennedy, when he has the role, he really scores well, and he's got the potential to be one of the better forwards. But it's just that starting price, $791K, just feels a little steep.
Yeah, no, agreed. We got a lot of people asking about Nick Newman. Tim, obviously Nick Newman last few years has been a guy has come home like a steam train, being one of the top scoring players in the whole game on the way home. He did it again last year. A lot of people are saying he's a good price to fit in at that D1 spot. Obviously, Sinclair's another one we've mentioned, but Nick Newman, is he someone that you might consider starting with, or is he one that you might sort of leave?
Yeah, when I'm looking at a defensive line, like what we were kind of talking about before, there's a bit of value there with, your Short, your Mills, your Perryman, your Colemans. And I think people are going to be looking for a primo there, right? And I mean, I like the look of a Jack Sinclair because, with that sort of role shift and maybe him, playing more full-time halfback, I think that gives him a little bit of upside. But I think that's what people are kind of looking for when they're looking at Newman. They're kind of looking for that primo with upside, because if we're looking at Sheasel, I'm just trying to think, the top priced, Whitfield, Sheasel, Zorko. I mean, I just don't think there's any value in them, right? Like, Whitfield obviously made a lot of money last year with the way the magic number works as well. I mean, maybe Jaden can give us a better answer, but I always kind of factor in that, the way the rookies are priced, that pretty much you've got to allow for players to their price. They need to be scoring roughly about 2 to 5% higher than what they're priced at to stay where they are. Is that right, Jaden, or am I completely fucking misunderstanding the way the game works?
Yeah, pretty close. You kind of have to do a little bit better than what you need to. So yeah, about right.
So, with obviously the role change with Sheasel, I mean, there's obviously a lot of questions about whether, there's any value in him. And then, of course, Whitfield as well. I kind of think that Whitfield is probably priced. Zorko. I mean, I think there's going to be those concerns about injuries again. I mean, obviously he got through last year, but who knows, what happens this year, right? It's probably an injury affected player, probably better off starting it. Once again, there's just no value in those players. I think people are looking for a bit of an anchor in the defence, and I think pretty strongly like Jack.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the connection was bad for everyone or if it was just on my end, but I sort of got the gist of what you're saying, Tim, there.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if it was... Yeah, sorry about that. It was brilliant. If you didn't hear it, it was probably the best advice I've ever given.
It looked captivating, for sure.
So what was the connection bad for you guys as well? Was that?
Yeah. Basically, I was saying Whitfield, Zorko, Sheasel. Like, there's just no value in them. If they're fully priced and there's probably even risks to their scoring, people are going to be looking for an anchor in the defence because there's a lot of mid-price options. They're probably going to want a primo there, like a Jack Sinclair or a Nick Newman. So, look, I think Nick Newman's a good option. I probably haven't dived into him enough to kind of give an opinion, but he's definitely on my watch list with that Jack Sinclair as that kind of primo to kind of anchor my defensive line.
Yeah, and the other thing as well, I didn't really think about, he's got Richmond round 1, so could go big from week 1. So something to watch there. Peter Wright, so he mentioned these two. A few other people mentioned Doherty as well, but he was mentioning Cornelio as well. Doherty, for me, I'm keeping a close eye on him. He's currently sitting in my team at the moment. It's more just about what his role is. There's obviously he's been training sometimes in the mids. Obviously, he can play wing defense. It's a big preseason watch for me to see where he plays in those games there, because if he's playing in a midfield or even a half-back role, then I could easily see a 90, 95, even 100 average there. But if he's playing on the wing, that's maybe a little bit more nerve-wracking week to week, so maybe I don't start with him. But Richmond, round 1, is a good matchup. And then Cogs as well. The early buy does suck, like the very first buy, but he could be one if he goes and scores a 110, 120 in week 1 in opening round and plays full-time midfield and looks the goods and has a good preseason, then he could be someone that's pretty cheap that we might be discussing. So a couple of preseason watches there for sure. We'll do a couple more, then we will wrap up. What have we got here? A few names coming through here. Power Prawn Star had put super chat in, so thanks, mate. Just seeing that there. So read the comments. We got a charity league going. You keen? Yeah, I'm keen. Just again, hit me up on Twitter, and we'll see what we can, or Instagram, whatever you got. We can see what we can work out, and maybe be able to put it up on the shows and sort of put it out there. So yeah, send me a message there. Power Prawn Star, and thank you very much for the super chat as always. We had someone here ask about Petrarca, Jordox. Thoughts on Christian Petrarca about the 900K? Looking good in the preseason from all reports. Is he someone that you might look at?
Oh, he's a specimen. He's always looking good. I think, I don't know.
Underpriced. I think he's going to get more midfield time.
Yeah, I don't know.
He worries you though, right?
Yeah, it's not his body or anything like that. It's more Melbourne they kind of need someone else. You know, it can't just be Petrarca and Oliver. And I guess for Langford, yeah, let's put the first gamer on. It's up to you, son. But you know what I mean? It's just, I think his value forward is still going to be there. And I don't know if he's going to have that ceiling to make it a worthwhile investment, particularly if you've already got an Oliver who's much cheaper.
Yeah.
They need goals, Melbourne. Yeah. Oh, mate, what do you boys think?
Well, it'd be interesting to see what that dynamic looks like, because Neil Bullen was a guy that was able to unlock a lot of that Petrarca movement in terms of the system. So him gone, do they bring someone else in to play that role? That'll be interesting to see sort of where that goes there. But he's a guy to watch for sure. Obviously, there's always that potential of, even if he doesn't play a heap of mid-time, then he might get forward status in round 6. So like you might play a lot of midfield and score really well, or he might even play a bit more forward and get forward status. So he's going to be an interesting one to sort of watch in the preseason there as well. Obviously coming back from that pretty serious injury last year as well. Final two players, Jane, I want to get your thoughts on, then we'll wrap up. We had a suggestion here from, if I find, Peter Wright was asking about Ryan Burton, and then someone was also asking about Kane Farrell as well. So Farrell, I've got a bit of an eye on as well. So what are your thoughts on those Port boys with Dan Houston obviously going to Collingwood? What are your thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I feel like we're in a similar kind of position last year with Port Adelaide having these kind of cheaper guys. They didn't really do a lot the year before either. And yeah, they were coming through as potential options, Burton in particular. And yeah, we're kind of here again, but Houston's gone this time. I'm a little bit hesitant because they didn't really have a particular distributor when Houston was gone. They did share it around a little bit, and Port Adelaide haven't been a high-scoring team for under Ken Hinkley really at all, and they've been restrictive in that time as well. But yeah, so I'm a little bit hesitant at the moment. I think there's one there that could work out, but yeah, I'm not sure who that is yet. So it'll be a preseason watch for me just to figure out what they're doing back there. I do feel like they could share it around because I feel like Houston plays a bit more up the ground, and he kind of is a bit more around the back of the stoppage a little bit because he's like so good, and I'm so happy he's at Collingwood. But yeah, I think we didn't really see a heap in the back end of last year when Houston was suspended.
Yeah. Just quickly with Houston as well, P might be suggesting him as well. Early buy, but he's also suspended for that opening round as well. Early buy as well, the bad buy. So he's a guy we watch as well. So if anyone was sort of had him there, I'd probably just put a line through him just to start the season, but you can look at jumping on. But the thing that I guess sucks for someone like a Farrell is that he wasn't playing pretty much when Houston got suspended, because the following week he did his, I think it was his hamstring against Fremantle. So we never really got a sort of a good watch of what his role would be. So he'd be a one in the preseason. I'm keen on to see if does he just take that Houston role and part the ground, because he's a beautiful kick, one of the best kicks I think in the AFL, I think, and one of those guys come off halfback. So someone I'll be watching.
Logan Evans sort of popped up out of nowhere when Houston was out. I think he's someone that could be one to watch as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, something to watch for sure. Alrighty. Actually, PowerPoints, I just put super chat here as well. So you just said the league code there. I don't do Twitter. $150 to charity of your choice and a carton of beverage, Coke for me. Talking about obviously me. Of your choice, tell the other lads. Yep, no, definitely something we can work out there. Obviously, close to the season, I won't organise leagues and stuff now. But yeah, PowerPoints, that sounds like a good idea, mate, to get the viewers involved in the league and doing that there. So a bit of like a viewers, content creators cup in a way sort of type thing. Looking forward to avenging my loss this year as well. Beautiful. Tim, I reckon that's it. So I think we'll wrap up.
Awesome. All right.
Just before we do, though, just a quick shout out to the guys on YouTube watching, guys and girls. We talked about whether we'd make this a live or just do a pre-recorded one. The amount of comments and conversations going on, it's brilliant, so thanks for joining us. It's nearly Christmas and we've got heaps of people watching and talking about fantasy. I think it's brilliant. So
we're all frothing, we're all ready to go. We want footy. So yeah, beautiful. Thanks, guys.
Well, great to be with everyone, and I think obviously we had a bit of a special announcement today. Obviously, announcing everyone to the new member of the AFL Fantasy Fanatics family. Obviously, Jaden. So that's some good news there. We have got probably some other stuff we'll be coming out with soon. Some other exciting announcements for the coming 2025 AFL Fantasy Fanatics year, and that includes Infinite Wealth and Infinite Wealth sponsorship of the podcast. I've got something brand new that I'll be able to give out to our listeners. The last couple of years, it's basically been the same thing for the last couple of years, but I've got something brand new, and it's not actually solely focused towards investment, like people that might be a bit older or have a mortgage. It's actually focused to people that are maybe just getting out and getting started. So it's helping people set up bank accounts without paying any bank fees, showing them how to pay down debt, how to structure buckets, all kinds of really cool stuff like that. So something exciting for the listeners. And then there's also some exciting news that we've got coming in the coming weeks about the podcast and what will be happening in 2025 as well. But apart from that, guys, just a massive thanks to everyone for joining us. I really just echo what Jordox said as well. I mean, for me, there was no question about us doing a live show. I mean, I love the fact that we get on and there's, I don't know, whatever it is, a couple hundred people that are posting questions and all that kind of stuff. I really, love interacting with the community. So thanks to everyone out there for being a part of it. It's what makes it great for us. We will be kind of keeping that broad schedule going into 2025 of we'll do the round reviews at the end of the round after the final siren every week. We'll do a Tuesday night Q&A, and then we'll do our Friday pre-lockout chats. And then, of course, Bales, the machine, will be bumping out content every bloody day. In fact, this will be the only place where you'll be able to get fantasy content every single day. Something that we're really, really proud of, and something that, is also made available by expanding our team. Bloody Bales needs a wingman. So we needed more. We needed more people. But guys, like I said, just thanks to everyone for joining us. A special thanks to those who sent questions. As always, guys, please follow, subscribe. And look, we'd love it. It really makes a really big difference for us if you guys give us a 5-star review. So if you don't listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please go across, give us a 5-star review. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, smash the like button, share, do all the things that, help us with YouTube in terms of getting extra reach and getting extra audience and viewers and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, like I said, don't forget to tune in. Well, actually, I won't say that bit because we haven't got 3 pods scheduled a week yet, but we will be coming out and letting guys know about content schedule. And yeah, Bars?
Yeah, no, just before we finish up as well, obviously a favour for everyone that's listening as well, whether podcast, YouTube, whatever. If you have not subscribed to our channel, make sure you do. As Tim said, daily content in the season. But we just passed 2,750 subscribers. So we're 250 away from 3K, which has been a big goal of mine for the back half of the year. If we can get to 3K before the start of the season, that'd be fantastic. Obviously, the more the better would be great. But if you have not subscribed, I know that there's roughly about half of the people that watch on YouTube that haven't pressed subscribe yet. Make sure you do content daily throughout the season. As I said, plenty of really, really good content coming as well. Pre-season head-to-head series will be coming out. There'll be a lot of different interviews. I've got an interview with Mitch, obviously from Ball Boys. That'll be coming out on Wednesday as well, chatting about his year last year. So make sure you guys tune to that as well. And if you want to check out my team reveal, the very first one, make sure you guys check that out as well. That's already been uploaded to YouTube.
A little sneak peek, actually, for those that are hanging on this line and for the boys. We're actually thinking about doing something where we might give an audience member an opportunity to join the Content Creators Cup this year.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that?
Could be in the works.
All right. So if that's something that interests you, stay tuned. All right, guys. Look, lastly, everyone out there, it's Christmas time. Please be safe. Have a good time with your families. I know it can be a bit of a stressful time of year. Take a breath. Don't yell at them, and have a great time. Be safe, and we'll look forward to chatting to everyone in 2025. From me, guys, thanks a lot. From everyone else, I'll let the boys say Merry Christmas as well.
Yeah, well, we'll go around the room and obviously plug the Twitter handles and and any last words. So, Jaden, mate, where can people find you?
Cheers for having me on first time in the AFL, not the AFLW, but good to be on and be involved throughout the season. So yeah, cheers everyone for watching. You can find my stuff. Just probably search my name; it'll come up on Twitter. Not many people with this name, so you should be able to find it. So
the one and only. And he's ours now. Love it.
Bow!
You can find me on X at Jordox 2020. And yeah, as Tim said, just look after yourself and those around you. It's a pretty crazy time of year, but just try and take some time and enjoy it because it goes quick. And before you know it, round 1 will be here. So giddy up. Take care, everyone.
Yep. Looking forward to it. And you find me at BAILSDT as well. And yeah, as everyone said, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Enjoy all the time with your friends and family and have plenty of good food and hopefully get some good Christmas presents as well. That'd be good. So, but yeah, everyone have a safe New Year and big year in 2025 for AFL Fantasy and us at the Fantasy Fanatics. You can find us at AFL Fantasy Fans as well. So make sure you go and do that.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.
Merry Christmas.
See ya.